guys, welcome back to Intuitive Angling, and really appreciate you guys hanging out with me a little bit and swinging by the channel. You guys, today we're going to be talking about the one thing that you need to pay attention to as soon as you catch a bass. This one thing will tell you so much about how you're going to get to your next fish. So we're going to go over that in today's episode. And this is something that took me a long time to learn. It's like all this stuff that I'm trying to share with you guys on the channel here. It's come from trial and error. I mean, failures and successes and reproducible results. So I'm going to pass along something I think it's going to really help you guys fishing out moving forward here. Also, guys, a couple quick things before we get started. Just a quick reminder that Solar Bat has got their 250th, or celebration of our nation's 250th anniversary sale going on my Signature Series glasses, guys. Right now, you can get them at half price, 50% off on my RB2 and RB3 series glasses. Got 3 different frame colors, a bunch of different lens colors on the thing. I'll put the Solar Bat link in the description of the video, or you can get them through my Tackle Warehouse link in the description of this video. Appreciate that. And also, guys, for get started, thank you very much, man, for everybody that's hit that subscribe button here at Intuitive Angling. Free and easy to do so. If you like the videos, hit that like button, hit the hype button, comment on the videos. That helps push it out. And thank you, everybody that's been joining up as a channel member. Also, really appreciate that. Okay, first of all, one of the things that you got to realize, and this is pretty much the meat of what I want to talk about in this video, is that there's one reality about bass that you have got to accept. And it frustrates people, and people can't intellectualize it, and they have a hard time dealing with it. The fact is, bass are where you find them. And what I mean by that is, you can watch YouTube videos, you can read all about bass fishing, where they should be, based upon water temperature and water clarity and time of the year. All this stuff, you try to put into some type of a context to make sense, where you can sort of develop a pattern and begin your search for the day. But ultimately, you have to keep it in the back of your mind that bass are where you find them at. And sometimes it doesn't make any reason, doesn't make any sense. They are just there for whatever reason. And the thing that you really have to pay close attention to, that I want to get into as part of it, what I really want to get into, the bass are where you find them, is one of the biggest clues to understanding how bass is positioned and how they're biting your lure and where your next cast is when you hook a bass, pay close attention to where the hook is at within that fish's mouth. This is a huge clue right here that gives you an idea of how the bass was positioned on a piece of cover based upon where it's hooked at. If it's hooked on the roof of the mouth, the bottom of the mouth, outside the mouth, on the side, that's going to give you a good indicator of the location of that particular bass. Also, another thing about it, this is one little side note. A lot of you guys, I don't know if you've ever seen it, but sometimes the bass will be hooked through the bottom lip with a single hook, like with a jig or Texas rig or shaky head. You know how that happens when they're hooked through the bottom lip? They've inverted and they've turned upside down, and they've hit the bait upside down. So they open their mouth, they suck it in, you set the hook, and the hook's penetrated through their lower jaw, which is actually the jaw that's facing closer to the surface. I have seen them invert and hit a bait before, so they're pretty versatile with that. But anyway, let's get back to the topic here, is bass are where you find them at. There's a lot of factors that determine where bass are going to be at in any given situation. The main factor with this, and this is one of the things that you really have to pay attention to in your fishing, is the position of a bass that does not make any sense. A lot of time has to do with the activity and fishing pressure on a lake. One of the things that I have noticed is that the heavier pressured lakes, if you have a lot of tournament boats, if you have a lot of fishermen, if you've got recreational boats, you got jet skis buzzing around, all this type of stuff. If you have a heavily fished public body of water, bass do not read books, and they will not pay attention to these traditional type structures to be on. A lot of times they are in places that it just doesn't make any sense at all. Let me give you a prime example. You'll go back into one of the major creek arms in a lake, and if you look on one side of the creek, it looks beautiful. You got some rock transitions. You may have some lay down trees in the water. You might even have some lily pads in the water, boat docks. Say it just looks fishy as heck. And on the other side of the creek, or maybe a little bit further down, it turns into some nothing looking bank. Maybe it's flatter, maybe there's not much cover on it, that type of thing. Yet you go to the flat, nothing looking bank that doesn't make any sense and catch fish. This is because the fish will move to an area that is not quite as suitable habitat-wise to escape that noise. They will. I've seen them do this many, many times. I have seen so many situations where I wound up catching fish off the ugliest, nothing-looking banks that there are there. And it's my theory that they do that to escape the noise decibel levels. Because if you look at everything in terms of why bass use different type of cover, it's usually because they want some type of an ambush point or security. They want something that has good habitat, for other type of, prey fish. Like, for example, a boat dock that has floats on it, you're going to have, moss growing on the side of it and all that type of stuff. So, a lot of times the perch and the bluegill will come in there, and therefore the bass will come in after that. So every piece of structure has habitat suitable for them. But the main thing with that is the bass have got to feel secure where they're at. And that's why a lot of bass will go out and roam out in the middle of the lake in open water. Some bass will tuck down in super, super heavy cover. And some bass will just get on those areas where there's, hardly no activity or no fishing pressure. So you have to go into your day with an open mind. It's like when you go out fishing, you have to start somewhere. I don't care if you plan on pitching and flipping or throwing a topwater or whatever it is. And based upon how everything is going from like a 15-minute interval to a 15-minute interval, you have to make changes to adapt to that situation. I give it what I call the 15-minute rule. Now let me give you a prime example. What I'm talking about is you have to stay open-minded. I was fishing a tournament last year at Table Rock Lake. It was a pre-spawn tournament, and in that situation, it's really good to fish the steeper rock transition areas with like a wigglework crankbait or a jig or something like that. The fish love to be on those rock transitions and those channel banks. This is typical 101 bass fishing behavior. Okay, this particular tournament that I fished, there was a lot of tournament activity going on in the lake that weekend. And I'd been catching a few fish the day before in practice on those type of areas. I pulled down what I thought was the best stretch in the tournament, and I fished it slow, methodically. The nice rock transitions and outcroppings and channel banks just looked perfect, and didn't catch anything. And I got down to the end of the bank, and the bank flattened out, and it turned into like a gravelly type flat bank. There wasn't much cover on it, but the water started getting a lot shallower. And the water temperature was probably in the mid-50s. So at this point, I'm just about ready to pick up the trolling motor. And I said, I don't know, man, I didn't catch one. I'm just going to fish down here another 50 yards. So I start fishing down there another 50 yards, and I caught like 3 good fish on this nothing looking bank that doesn't make any sense why those fish should be there. It's like, after I caught those 3, I looked at everything, and it's like, okay, why were those fish there? It's like, before, when I was on that channel bank, my boat was in like 15 foot of water, and it was a nice rocky drop off, and everything looked perfect. And then when I got to this area where it flattened out, my boat was in like 5 or 6 foot of water, and I was casting to the bank, and I didn't have any confidence when I pulled up there that I'd catch one until I actually caught one. So in that situation, I got thinking, it's like, why is that bass there? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. If that bass would swim back another 50 yards or 100 yards behind me, they would have immediate access to deep water. They'd have a lot of diversity of cover. They'd have rocks, they'd have ledges, they'd have some lay down trees. Why is that fish there? And that is because it goes back to the video. Bass are where you find them, and you can't like intellectualize it. You can't overanalyze it. You can't put too much thought in it. You just have to accept it, that it is what it is. So that, if there wasn't another thing that made bass fishing more complicated, I just threw you something right there that made it more complicated. Because now you're going to say, well, Randy, it's like all this stuff you're teaching us about, where bass should be in high percentage areas, now that's just worthless because they could just be anywhere. I'm not saying that all the time. I'm saying that sometimes it is like that. Most of the time, those high percentage areas that I'm talking about are going to pay off. I mean, most of the time they're going to, based upon the time of the day. But you have to keep an open-minded, guys. If that is not working, try some of the off-the-wall stuff, and a lot of times it'll work. You just accept that fact that those fish are where they're at, man. Anyway, I hope it helps out. We'll talk later.